All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live across Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. My name is Jimmy McKay from the Abilities Research Center. I get to be the Director of Science Communication, which means I get to hang out with really smart people and help you, as well as me, understand what they're actually smart about. Today, our guest is trying to speed up science with user experience design. You can watch his 2-minute manifesto video. I'll put the link in the comments below. He's got a PhD in work psychology, and he is the grandfather of, I think that's good, grandfather of hashtag better poster, which at its core, I like to describe to people, is a movement to improve scientific posters so we can get all that knowledge from the poster into our brains. But don't stop there. We want people to use the information that they get from scientific posters. So without further ado, Mike Morrison. Dr. Mike Morrison.
That's right, Dr. Mike Morrison. I'm PhD done. Thank you, Jimmy, for the
PhD
intro.
done.
And thanks,
All right,
everybody.
so I didn't do all of the level set in terms of your background, because before your PhD in work psychology, I think this other previous life of yours adds to what you get to do now. And we have no idea what Dr. Mike Morrison's going to do. You're going to change the world and change
Who
science.
knows? Yeah.
But what did you do
Could
before
do
you got
nothing.
your PhD in work psychology?
So I'm kind of a hybrid now. So I was a web developer and UX and user experience designer for about 10 years. Short life story. Got really burned out. Started a PhD in work psychology, and then I had a bad health scare. And if you've had a bad health scare, or you have a disability or something like that, you just are kind of like waiting on science to save you, which we all kind of understand now, right? And I needed to like speed up science. And the fastest thing I could think of to speed up all of science to cure like everything faster was to bring in what I did before, which is user experience design. So user experience design is like what Silicon Valley uses to, multiply profits times 1,000 or something like that. Like there's been just crazy surveys on it and stuff. And like you can use that to speed up any workflow. So that's what you're going to learn today.
So you get to draw from previous experience and your education and put these two things together. And that is near and dear to my heart, as my former life as a radio DJ and now in healthcare as a physical therapist. You get to be this cool hybrid thing, this yes and. And
yes.
The first time I came across your work, I alluded to it in the intro, was this hashtag better poster. And this will be the setup, and then you can give people the punchline. But somebody sent me the video on Twitter, and I looked at the time, how long the video was, like everybody else does. Ooh, how long is this? And it was like 19 minutes, right?
Oh, sorry. I'm still living
and
that down.
I said to myself, I will watch 90 seconds of this, and I will be done with it. It'll probably be cool. I'll watch 90 seconds. And I watched the 19-minute video twice because, and this is like great content that shows me how I can become a better version of me, speaks right to the audience and compels them right for the start. It was well done. It was a cartoon, which we all can relate to. And so if you had to, which I'm sure you've had to, how do you describe what your better poster movement is, or the video that you really use to kind of drive home the point?
I can kind of show you if you want me to launch into my presentation now.
Let's do that. And without further ado.
All right. Cool. All right. So I'm sorry for the dog barking in the background. We adopted a foster dog recently who is policing all sirens that drive by. Anyway, so we have what you're going to learn right now is the basic principles of something called user experience design. User experience design isn't like graphic design. Graphic design is more about aesthetics and things like that. I can teach you, it takes a lifetime to learn graphic design. I can teach you user experience design, or the basics, in the course of this webinar, right? The basic idea is that you sort of acknowledge that people are lazy as a matter of efficiency. Everybody wants the maximum possible reward for the least possible effort, and that's efficient, right? Like more calories in than calories out, right? And you kind of gotta love people for that laziness instead of pretending that it doesn't exist. If you've ever done like lazy hacks around your house, like put a code hook in a weird place because you're just gonna want to throw stuff there. That's all UX is. And now we're gonna apply it to speeding up science. So this is a traditional scientific poster. This is also known as like the wall of text or the paper on a poster approach, right? Scientific posters have looked the same across every field of science, as best I can tell, for the last 30 years. I've had people email me and say, like, Mike, I was at poster sessions in the 70s. They were the same, right? Like, it might go back further. But this should be a red flag to you. I mean, a lot of things have happened in the last 30 years, right? And we have a lot of good research on communication, on design that has come out in that time. Like, really, if we were applying that new research every year to posters would change every year if we were applying science to them, right? They would get better and better and better, just like science does. So the fact that the poster design is kind of stagnated for 30 years is kind of a red flag, and should be a red flag to you, that something else is going on here. as an example, conformity, right? Like you're not trained on design, you don't know what to do, so you just sort of copy everybody else, and everybody does that for years, and that's how we get here. So a couple years ago, I introduced this idea, right? This is called a Better Poster version 1. You have your main finding right in the middle, right? Main finding goes here with a big key figure. And then you have sidebars where like the one on the left is far away from the presenter's physical body. People call this like the introvert bar because you can like stand and skim the poster without having to like engage the presenter. And then you've got more on the right that the presenter can kind of speak to and point at, right? And then you have a QR code here down at the bottom. So if you take a picture of the poster, you can download a copy of the full paper and get more detail and move on to other posters. That was the first idea, right? Here's a version 2 Better poster that came out a year later in response to feedback and everybody trying the first version. The first version, or these combined versions, have over 250,000 downloads now. So if you walk into any poster session in science, you're going to see some of these probably. But this is a generation 2 Better poster. A couple changes. One, the color. I started advising using color to simulate study relevant emotion. This poster is about bad mood. It's red. Wasn't super hard, but color can be hard. People wanted a bigger space for key figures, so I made sort of a hero figure area. I moved the author names to the bottom, like movie credits, except the key author. Because I mean, in a poster session, you're wearing a name tag, and to the attendee, like the authors are like the last thing that's important to them for like learning. They want to learn all your study, and then they'll look at your name tag, and then the rest of the authors are like bottom of their priority, right? Here's another generation 2 layout. The idea is, again, main finding top left, and it encourages you to visualize it, embedded in negative space, and then you just have some really big key figures with punchlines above each figure. So you can see here, like at the top left here, imagining the text as pictures was better than just reading. And that sort of like really quickly helps you understand what the graph is trying to say. So it saves you the cognitive load of trying to like sit there and stare at it and figure out what it's saying, right? And you can see standing next to this and just sort of pointing at these big figures. So those are the kind of Better Poster family. As Jimmy said, I have videos. The Better Poster Part 1 video is the one that went super viral. I have a Part 2 video that I followed up with a year later that has more of the research studies and the design principles behind Better Poster, so you can create your own. You don't have to use my layouts. You can kind of like know the principles, which is some of what you're going to learn today. And then I have a third video on Twitter Poster, which is sort of an idea for communicating research through Twitter. All of these videos have kind of gone viral on their own. Twitter poster especially is like the little video that could. People have had whole conferences full of Twitter posters. If you look at hashtag Twitter poster, you'll see a lot of these examples. Better Poster Part 1 is probably the funniest, and that's why it has the most hits. Better Poster Part 2 is probably a little bit smarter. It has more of the research that you can see. But that's a great place to go for like a deep dive in any of the things you're about to learn. So the traditional, when you start to approach a poster session, you get a lot of different advice. And I think a lot of that advice kind of boils down to, and this is what was told to me when I was a grad student, is that you want to design your poster kind of like a mousetrap, right? You want to like trap people. If you do a good job with poster design, then a lot of people will talk to you, right? And so that's kind of your dependent variable. You want to like get a lot of stops or whatever, right? And the problem with this mentality is there's two problems. One is it sort of encourages you to clickbait your poster. You just want to like, that's what clickbait is. You're like trying to get people to click, right? So you just kind of get people to stop. And the second problem is that if you're an attendee walking through and every poster is designed this way, you just feel like just anxious, like you're just avoiding these traps. You're like, which one am I going to commit to, right? You're like, you'll see people just walking by, like avoiding eye contact, not even looking at a lot of posters before they decide to like engage and like invest in one for 15 minutes when there's 100 in the whole show, right? So it's really not effective for getting a lot of insight out of this poster session where there's 100 new insights for you in that room, and you're forced to like trap yourself into one or two, right? And you feel just sort of like trapped going through them. What I encourage you to do, instead of thinking about your poster like a mousetrap and trying to build a better mousetrap, try to think of it like this. So this is called a tower defense game. Some of you have probably played like Plants vs. Zombies on Facebook or something. Same kind of deal. So a charitable interpretation of what's going on here is that you're trying to feed the bugs healthy. You're the little alien eyeballs. And you're trying to feed the bugs healthy food so they get full before they get to the cookie, right? Or you're trying to kill them, whichever you want to interpret this as. But if you think about this as a poster session, right? And the bugs walking through are the attendees, and you and your poster are the little alien eyeballs, and you're like shooting knowledge at the attendees, right? They're walking by, they're barely scanning stuff, they're stopping for a second, right? And you're just trying to get as much of what you've learned, your insight, into their brain as they're going through, right? It's kind of a selfless approach to designing your poster. And what this results in is if you're the attendee and you're the bug, right? You're walking through, you just get all this insight shot into your brain as you're walking through, right? And you just get full of insight, which is kind of the experience I think we all want going through a poster session. So try to think about your poster in terms more of like getting knowledge into people's brains as they're kind of walking by, trying not to pay attention, right? And paradoxically, if you do that, we're still doing studies on this, but there's some evidence so far that more people might stop. That's very weak so far. We're still testing it, but like it's definitely not less. We know that, and it might be more. So that you're not going to lose out really, and you will get more people some insight who walked by. So I can show you how to win this game and how to get winning this game to me is you transmit something you learned about your research to almost everybody who walks by, almost everybody in the room, 100 people. We did a study that found that like the average poster gets like 6.5 people stopping. Try to go for 100. Like instead of 6.5, try to get insight to like all 100 or 200 that walk through, right? And it's really easy to win this game. I'll show you, just do something like this. You only put one thing on your poster and it's a takeaway, right? Mood affects attention at work. And I'll show you how this performs by showing you. So I've got some like simulated eye tracking data. So what this program is going to do, this is kind of cool, is it sort of compares to human eye tracking, and I tried to develop an algorithm to predict how humans would look at a given design, right? And you can run it on any design. This is going to be the future. So if you use Adobe software, you'll have this plugin soon if you don't already. You'll be able to just run immediate unlimited eye tracking on all your designs. So here's a traditional scientific poster, and I'm going to run some simulated eye tracking on it. And what comes out is this. I already ran it. You get all these like hotspots everywhere, right? Like the logo is in a focal area, right? Like that's not related to the learning at all, right? And like, you know, the axis labels over here, it's just all over the place, right? But if you look at this like simple poster, this like minimum viable poster, right? Of course, all the attention's right there, right? There's no conflict. And the takeaway here is two things. One, everything you put on a design competes with everything else. So the way to really get something across is to have nothing competing with it. That's the only surefire way to really get something across. The more you add to your poster design or any design, the harder it is to get people to pay attention to any one thing. And I'll show you some more examples here of the eye tracking because it's fun. Let's see. So here's a more complex poster, right? This is still kind of lightweight by like traditional poster standards, but we're going to run some eye tracking on it. You see here, this is one of my poster designs. Everything that's in a hotspot is something valuable, right? Like mood affects attention at work. Negative affect is distracting, which lowers job performance. Big SEM model, right? Another key takeaway right here. And then you can see there's some pretty good scan paths going through my little methods flowchart. And they have a hotspot around read paper, right? Everything is valuable if it's in this sort of blob, but it's not quite perfect. And you can see here the software tried to predict what order people would look in. So they look at like, they were kind of missing my main takeaway up here, right? So I want to fix that. Got a little broken visual hierarchy here. And the way I'm going to fix that is half by cheating, just to show you a point. But I'm going to take this header and I'm just going to make it bigger. And then we're going to run the eye tracking on that. What happens is this, right? You get a focal point and it fixed the gaze order, right? People look at this first now. And what changed is that I added space around this, right? A lot of people see the better poster designs and things like that, and I think like, oh, that space is empty. Empty space isn't functionless. It's extremely functional. It helps you find signal in the noise, and you can see that in the eye tracking data. It helps people orient very, very quickly when you put negative space around something. This is a Better Poster version 1. You can see I kind of try to get at this in all my designs, you know, to some success or failure, depending on the design. But Better Poster version 1, right, most of the focus is right in the main finding, right in the middle, and the big key figure, right? You can see in here's another generation 2 Better Poster, right? You get a key takeaway, a visual takeaway, right? And then you have good scan paths for the methods and the key figures, right? There's like an efficiency to this that saves people cognitive load. And when you save people like the mental effort of trying to figure out where everything is on your design, and you help just sort of guide their eyeballs through it, they have more resources left over to kind of process your poster and not get fatigued, and they'll probably have a lot better experience. So I try to get at that with my designs, and now is your turn to practice this. So this whole concept of sort of guiding people's eyes is called visual hierarchy. So you may have seen, let's get back to it, this meme going around. Oops, sorry. You will read this first, and you'll read this, then this one, and you'll read this last. This is all the designer did, was just sort of use the same principles to manipulate your eye around. This is called visual hierarchy again. And you can actually kind of get good at this pretty quickly. So we're going to try it. So I'm going to send out a link, or Jimmy, I'm going to send you a link, and then hopefully you can send it out. We're going to all get to know each other really well, whoever's on this. Let's see. Okay. Link in the chat. I'm going to send you a link to a Google Doc. It should look like this. Jimmy, you can put that out on YouTube. Cool. All right, I got a couple people in there. Oh, thank you guys for coming in. We've done this with up to 120 people, and then Google Docs started to fray, but we're good so far. Okay, cool. All right, when you get in, you're going to see a bunch of slides with numbers all over them. Pick a slide and duplicate it. So you're going to like pick a slide, right click and say duplicate slide, and then put your name in the speaker notes. You know, like I'll take like, you know, slide 1, I'll duplicate it. In the speaker notes, I'll be like Mike slide, do not touch. Everybody a second to do that. Cool. Okay, cool. All right, so you go look back at my screen now. So what you're going to do is you're going to cover up these numbers, and you're going to try to make me or other people look in the order of the numbers. So I'll show you a couple examples. Like here was my friend Mortiz, who's in Germany, I think. So he did, your eye goes to his picture first, right? That was his number 1. Then you go to hi, Mortiz, that was his number 2. Then follow this arrow, that was his number 3. And then well done was his number 4. So he directed your eyes right in the right order, right? Here's another one. This is Tanya's from another webinar. So hello, my name is Tanya. I hope you enjoy reading my slide as much as I enjoyed making it, right? That was her number, you know, her number 1 was here. Number 2 is here, number 3, number 4, right? That's what she did. So I'm going to basically start a timer, and then you guys just cover up your numbers and try to make people look in that order, right? There are no rules besides that. I'm going to give you tips. You can copy and paste from Google Images. You can use shapes. You can change the background color. It's lawless. It's your rules. Okay, so I'm going to start a timer for 5 minutes here. Okay, go.
All right. So sorry, I was muted before. I was talking to you.
Okay,
so each one of the slides has a different, that's what it is. The slides
different
have
pattern.
patterns. Got it.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So the goal is to get someone to take their random pattern, cover it up, and see if they can actually draw you from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Let's see how well and your first tip is that the eye goes to where the most contrast is first. So you can think of that as like dark, like a dark blue on a white background is going to have higher contrast than a light blue on a white background, right?
One more time. Wait. What will have better?
Well, size works too. So like a bigger thing is easier to see than a smaller thing, right? A dark color on a light background has more contrast than like a, you know, think of like have you ever seen like gray on white? It's kind of like low contrast, right?
Right.
So you can use color that way too. And the idea here is that you're thinking of both how to speed up processing and slow it down. So you want people to see your number 1 sooner, so maybe like very high contrast, right, or very big, and you want them to see your like number 4 later, so you want it kind of lower contrast or smaller, and that's just your first tip. Generally, like the eye kind of goes towards what's easiest to process first, which means you can make people process things earlier by making it easier to process, and make people process things later, if you want that, by making them harder to process. So like an image is very, very easy to process. Text or a wall of text is slower to process, right? So a big image versus a small block of text, right? The big image is going to be seen much, much earlier than the small block of text, right? That'd be your next tip. Ready to see some of you pasting images. Good job. Again, size is a big one. Your next tip is faces. So faces are kind of like a supercharger for visual hierarchy. Even above like a regular image, your eye is going to go to a face really, really quickly. We're just kind of attuned for that. So you can try to use faces. Try to limit yourself to 1 arrow, by the way. The way arrows work is through your next tip, which is alignment. So you probably, if you've done a poster or something before, you've like tried to align things, right? What alignment does is create sort of like an invisible line. So if you have like a number 1, like way across from a number 2, right? And there's stuff in between, if you put stuff on top of your number 1 and your number 2 that have like a common top edge or something, your eye will just naturally go from number 1, like it'll follow that invisible line between the shared top edge. And that's how alignment kind of directs your eye. So you've got contrast, what's easy, big and easy to process, which is the same as size. You've got like straight ease of processing, which is like pictures before text. Another one is alignment, which is like things that share a common edge. By the way, you have basically 2 minutes left, so you're still good on time. Your next tip is repetition. So if you repeat a color, right? So if you have like a number 1, and you're trying to get somebody to jump from a number 1 to a number 2 that's way across, and you make them the same color, for some reason there's this weird visual rhyme effect where like if you're looking at an orange thing, you're gonna be like, oh, I'll find another orange thing, and you just sort of automatically kind of map that in your brain and jump to it. So you can use that repetition to kind of jump people's eyeballs. It's really hard on this game if you have like a number 4 like right next to a number 1 or something, because proximity plays a big role too. So like when you're looking at one thing, what's immediately around that thing is going to affect you. So if you have a number 4 right next to your number 1, and you're going to have to do something to really slow down that number 4 to get people to jump across it, right? Which will make it hard, but proximity is your next tip. You can actually manipulate proximity if you put like a big shape over one of your numbers to like, so it starts encroaching on the space of the next number you want them to jump to, right? I've seen people do that. Let's see. You've got about 30 seconds left. You're good? Your next tip is color. So generally like color is more stimulating than black and white. And a color image will usually be seen earlier than a black and white image. If you can't think of anything else to try, you still got about 20 seconds, use depth. So generally like the way size works is if you think of things descending in size, it's sort of an illusion that they're close to you or far away from you. So if you really have a clear size order, like big, less big, less big, less big, less big, it kind of gives you this illusion that things are closer and further, and you kind of follow that line. Okay, pencils down, we're gonna try it. Jimmy, you're gonna be really good at this next part. Okay, so I'm gonna do the first one, back to my screen. I'm just gonna click, I'm gonna pick a slide, and I'm gonna yell out what I see first, and then whoever that is gonna do the next one, okay? Ready? Here we go. I don't often make posters. Square with arrow, 3, 4. You don't often make posters, stranger, but you have 2 parts of your visual hierarchy perfectly. You use size and you pointed me in the direction of number 3. That would have worked perfectly. Whose is this?
It's not me. Who is it?
Okay, cool. I guess if they're on YouTube, they can't unmute themselves, I guess, right?
No, yeah, this won't work that way.
Gotcha. Okay, well,
podcasting, right?
That works. Jimmy, you want to do the next one?
Yes. Do I want to do the next one?
Yeah, just yell out what you see first. Just be like, thing, other thing, other thing. Okay.
No.
Ready?
Yes.
Go.
Well, that's my poster. You do this one.
Go.
Science is really for.
Nice. Gabby, perfect job. And you told a story, Gabby, which is hard. You know, like you did actually a cohesive narrative here, which is pretty good. That was perfect. Okay, I'll do Jimmy's. Good job, Gabby. Perfect score. Okay, I'll do Jimmy's. All right. Caveman guy. This thing.
I should have made that bigger.
You did, yeah, absolutely. So
that's tough though. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like,
No, some of these are really brutal, and like there's some that are way more harder than others, way harder than others. So I think to fix this, let's see, where was your number 1 was perfect, right? You had a face, you had a big guy, right? Let's see, that was your number 2, I think, was down here. Let's see if I can fix it. So this image has like low contrast because it's like white and blue on a white background. This has higher contrast, so you could probably get away with this. You probably could have done this one down here to get your 2, right? Like 1, 2, right. And then your image, and then make your text smaller for the 4. So like, and then image, and then 4. that might have worked, just because of the contrast. But you did a perfect and funny. Where were you thinking caveman? How did that come into your brain?
This was from my actual presentation where it says caveman wants you to make science have an impact, create content, rather rinse, repeat.
Excellent. It's perfect. It's a great figure and it's very attention getting. Okay, I think that's all of them. I don't think. Oh wait, got one more. Okay, Jimmy, you want to do this one? Next one?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Yep. Start arrow. Sad. Oh man, Chris.
Oh, so topical.
Way to go. Way to go. Pop culture.
Stranger. Perfect score.
But think about that. Like, think about that example. Watch. He put the thing. Who did this? Who did this one? Put your name in the comments or whatever. That was Jamie. Think about this. Think about this. This is a great example of like why Mike's thing works. That image right there, I've seen that image like 30 times today, and I still went to it last. Like it was imprinted because of the hierarchy and because of the order. I went to that thing last because I didn't react to it until I saw it.
Yeah. You did a really good job. Yeah, absolutely. You did a really good job using like size and direction here. Like you use like there's like what you did with this start. I mean, you know what you did, but like just to make it really obvious, like you had an invisible line here, right? Connected to this arrow that where it was pointing is really good. The emoji actually counts as a face. So like when they do these kind of studies on this kind of stuff, like they find that even if something like barely resembles a face, you'll start attending to it, right? And making that small was a great decision because any bigger it would have started drawing attention. So that was great. Wow. Yeah. So you guys did a good job all around. And the lesson here is that like you can, right? So a lot of people think that design is just like subjective or whatever. But like if you do a good job of directing people's eyes, and they've seen this in studies of this kind of stuff, where like a good visual hierarchy is one where most people look in the same order. If you strap eye trackers on them, and you all did that.
And before we move on, that Adobe product that is running AI, it's running an algorithm to do like, oh wow, okay. I thought this was like after you researched it with eye tracking. This is running
this is $9. And if you want to try this, if you have Adobe XD as the program, it's free. And then for $9 a month, you can run unlimited eye tracking. So like I do a lot of design for work, and it's easy, just like run an eye tracker on any freaking design I do because it's free. Why? You know, or I've already paid for it. They have more expensive versions, and I've seen somebody run like a $30,000 version of this software, like they're like really, really well validated, like simulated AI eye tracker on a better poster versus a traditional poster, and it was like even clearer. Like it was like all the attention was in the middle. And there's a book I can recommend that has this results in it, where like I laughed the first time I saw it. Well, you know, I was like, well, I wasn't crazy. Like you know, like it just boom right to the middle. We haven't done real eye trackers yet though. So good job with the visual hierarchy. You have just learned visual hierarchy. Again, if you want to research it more, there's a lot more to visual hierarchy, but you've all kind of got it. You all did a good job, really, you know. And like if you could, I know one of you said that you don't do posters that much, but like it's anything you design. It's like a report, a presentation, social media graphics. It's like a fundamental part of design is just directing the eyeballs efficiently. And for learning outcomes and engagement and things like that, what you're doing is you're saving. There's two parts to visual hierarchy. There's one where it's automatic, right? Big thing, small thing, right? And then there's like this top down where you're like, okay, I know to look at the top of the poster, right? Because I've seen that success looking at the top before, right? And what you're doing when you do this is you're just doing the automatic part for people because that's faster. And if you just do it for them, they don't have to, you know, spend the effort being like trying to find stuff. It's just a lot faster.
Would a good example of this, like in advertising, be like, remember the Absolute campaign where it was like, it's predictable, but they're all in unpredicted places?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure the bottle always had the top of the visual hierarchy. Yeah, no, and it's in everything, and you'll start to see it now, right? And if you go to a poster or you go to any design you interact with in the world where you like don't know where to look, like that's a bad visual hierarchy usually, which is incidentally most scientific products. Okay, so now some cold realities before our next fun demo. Thank you guys for sticking with me, even though you don't do much posters. Hopefully, one or two of you do posters. Okay, so this is a couple images of a poster session I got from Google Images. So right here, where is this attendee looking? He's looking at the presenter, right? He's not even looking at the poster. Like the poster's doing absolutely no work. It's communicating zero information. And this isn't a dig on this dude. Like this is normal. If you look through Google Images of poster sessions, people are like a lot of times looking at the presenter, and that's where you're getting all your information. The poster itself isn't actually doing anything. So like, what's the point of the poster, right? At all? And sometimes I wonder, like, what percentage gets ignored. And when I'm being charitable, it's like half your poster content gets ignored. When I'm being realistic, I think it's more like 90% or something. But we're still, that's pending any kind of study. I do have some on that if you want to ask in the Q&A. But here's another one. I call this like the 1,000-yard poster stare, right? Again, they're standing like 3 or 4 feet back from this poster, mainly looking at him, right? And they're kind of like blank staring at this poster. There's no way they can read that text from this far away. And this is really common. This is where people normally stand. They can probably get these images right, but the rest of this poster is not doing any work. They're, they're paying attention to him and kind of blank staring at the poster, right? And I think Jimmy, your advisor, had a saying, right? What is it, like you want to design your poster for like, you said like 3 beers, 3 feet, or 3 feet away with 3 beers in, or whatever.
So
is that
three people standing shoulder to shoulder, 3 meters away from the poster. After 3 beers, you should be able to understand it.
There are 2 of those variables, maybe 3 in this picture, right? Like we don't know what they were doing before this, but like, and so the advice holds, right? That you want to design things where people can see it from this distance and get something while you're talking, which is even harder because they're trying to listen to you too. So here's a good example. So I think she did a really good job of this one where she made her poster like really super big. Or this graphic really super big where it's, and she's pointing to it. So people can feasibly like read things with a graphic this big, even from far away, right? And if you don't do posters very much, the takeaway here is that like when you're doing UX design, you always have to sort of fit your environment. You really are paying attention to what people can see and what the user's experience is. Side example would be like, I think maybe you guys can relate to this. I remember when I was cleaning my grandparents' house with my dad one time, and I kept missing things. Like he'd be like, "You forgot the whatever." And I'm like, how are you seeing these things, right? I think I'm done, and then you pick out something else that I've missed, right? And finally, because we were cleaning my grandparents' house because my aunt and uncle were coming to visit. So finally, he takes me out in the driveway and he says, "Pretend you're a car." And so like literally like I squatted down in the driveway, pretended to pull up like a car. And I was like, "Oh, the rake." He's like, "Right, the rake." And I was like, "Oh, like," and you would see, and then walk into the house like they're gonna walk into the house. And then like I realized there's something left on that arm of the couch or whatever, right? And it didn't matter if I cleaned the upstairs bedroom or whatever, right? It mattered that path that they were gonna come in, right? That's kind of what UX design is doing. And that's all I've sort of done with posters is say like, well, the fact that they're standing 3 feet away is an important variable, right? It's not meaningless. That's something to take away for kind of everything you do. So next fun demo. Everybody get out their phones. I'm going to stream my real phone and my real Twitter. And what I want you to do is I want you to pull up the app you'd use on your phone if you were already bored of me talking and wanted to take a break. So Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, Facebook, New York Times if you're fancy. And I am going to stream my real Twitter account, which is always, always risky. So full disclosure, if you're looking at my screen, I'm a psychologist. I follow a lot of diverse brains trying to be understanding. But if you see stuff related to UFOs or RuPaul's Drag Race, that's just because I like those things. So let's see. Okay, so what I want you to do is just pull up whatever you want to like scroll through, just something you do 1,000,000 times a day and just scroll, right? Or you can follow along with me. So as you're scrolling right here, right, you're using the same part of your brain when you do this kind of stuff to forage for information. You're using the same part of your brain that you used to use to forage for food, right? And you notice that like you kind of like scroll past some posts and kind of slow down on some others. Oh, God, there's another callback. And there are a couple factors that determine which posts that you kind of slow down on and which you kind of scroll past, right? And one of those variables is effort, right? Interaction costs. So you're listening to me talk right now, and I'm trying to talk and formulate these sentences. So I'm probably gravitating, and you're probably gravitating towards like images, things you can process really quickly and still listen to me, right? You're probably skipping over the long text and things like that, right? So that's one variable, is how easy it is to process. The other variable is how interesting it is to you. And this can change, right? So like find something funny. Now you're going to like skip over the serious post and be like, oh, Lay's potato chips, right? Or whatever, like, like bright colors, right? And it's then lots of exclamation points. It's like that's kind of like a positive tone, right? Now change your goal, like try to find something like serious, right? Now you're going to skip over the dog pictures and like the happy people, and you're going to try to find like something denser, something serious, right? You're going to look for like Ukrainian flags, things like that right now, not to bring it down. But so that second variable is what you're interested in the moment. And that's called information scent. And it's kind of like each of these tweets or Instagram posts or whatever you're going through is giving off a smell to you as to like whether they match your current goal or not, right? And you're kind of making a decision that you want something that matches that's sort of more interesting and higher information scent than it is effort. So perfect for you right now would be something serious looking that's a picture, right? low interaction cost, high information sent, or something funny. Okay, so phones down. So goodbye to those of you we lost. Some of you are inevitably still on Reddit. Hope, just remember that you're foraging. We always lose a couple in that demo. So what you just learned is called information foraging theory. So this is the bedrock of every website you've ever used, every app you've ever used is built based on information foraging theory, whether the designer knew it or not. So you're about to know more about user experience design, at least the theory and science side of it, than a lot of professional UX designers know, which I think is kind of cool. So we had a couple of basic concepts in there: interaction costs, like how much effort it was to read, right? So something that's very low interaction cost is like fast food, right? You just grab it on the way home. Something that's very high interaction cost is like going to the grocery store, following a recipe, going through all that, right? And for posters, you can think of it as like a very easy to read poster is very low interaction cost, right? And a very dense poster is very high interaction cost. Then the other variable is information sent. So information sent, I'm going to give you 3 titles for the same article. One title, investigating the effectiveness of differential mask usage strategies. Next one, it's kind of a clickbaity. Worried your cloth mask isn't filtering coronavirus? This hat could make it more effective. It sounds like clickbait, like BuzzFeed, right? That's what clickbait is. It's medium information sent. And if people are going through a poster session and their goal is to learn, then the highest information sent we can do to concord with that goal is to actually teach them something like this. Put a nylon stocking over your cloth mask to make it more effective at filtering out coronavirus. That literally is a hit of information. So it's very strong scent. And you can do it with images too. Like a weak scented image could just be a crowd, dialing it up a little bit. We know it's about masks. Very strong scent would be literally a nylon stocking over a cloth mask. Your goal here is to kind of, like, you can have very low interaction costs, like a 30-second video that you're going to click on because it's 30 seconds, who cares? Or you can have very high interaction costs with very strong information sent. Like you probably come across those articles where, like in my case, like they're like paywalled, a million pop-ups, but I want to read the article so bad, I'll like go into the HTML and like delete the pop-ups from the HTML so I can read the article. Like that's when the article's like speaking to your soul and that information sent's overcoming that interaction cost for you. So you kind of want the ideal though, which is like low interaction cost, high information sent, because then you will get engagement. The other variable is patch switching, like, you know, like which posters or which tweets or whatever you paid attention to and which ones you scrolled past, right? Each thing is a patch. You scroll past them, you're switching patches. So there are a couple of patterns to this, right? Like in a museum, they've really optimized your patch switching, right? So that you want to like spend like 30 seconds at each exhibit. You can get something out of each exhibit, right? They want to keep you circulating. And that's kind of what we want for poster sessions. We want to keep people circulating. We want to keep scientists circulating through these poster sessions so they get lots and lots of insight and like hopefully see the best poster in the room for them just by serendipity. Let's apply these concepts to a virtual poster session now. So here's a real virtual poster session, or a recreation of it anyway. Right away, like what are the patches? All these things are the patches. So each poster thumbnail is the patch, right? Where's the information sent coming from? Well, it's coming from these titles, and the titles are just the author's last name. This is giving you basically no information sent. And you've been in these kind of interfaces where you're like, your first step is choice paralysis because you're just like, I don't even know what to choose. I've got nothing to go on. That's called zero information sent. Then usually you click one, and then you have to like wait for it to load this giant PDF file. You have to zoom all over the place, right? Then you back out and have to like do this all over again, right? This is a very high interaction cost, very low information sent interface, which is bad. And usually you see a foraging pattern in poster sessions, online poster sessions, that probably looks like this, that you go browse one poster and then you're like, that was rough. And then you like click one more and then you just bail in the whole session and go back to Twitter or whatever, right? Going back to reading about Will Smith in today's case. And so we want to try to reduce those to fix virtual poster sessions. So we're going to try to apply these principles now to solve a problem. So here are our variables. You get the choice paralysis, click and zoom and zoom and zoom. So I'm going to show you a couple of concepts for doing this. Here's a traditional poster, right? And let's stream my phone again. Let's see. So here's what a traditional poster looks like on a phone. And some of you have been through this. It's miserable, right? Like it's just not counting the context. It's really, really hard to read. You got to zoom all over the place, right? Here is a little bit better one. This wouldn't still be great on a phone, right? But it's easier to read without zooming, right? You can get, it's actually 1 minute of total content for the whole thing, right? So you can process 1 minute of findings. It's a very high rate of return. It gives you a lot for every second of attention you give to it. And then you can click this button to read the paper if you want more, or just go on to other posters. So if you're forced into a more traditional layout, you could do something like this. But if we really wanted to break the mold, we could do something like this. So this is a 5-slide PowerPoint deck with just square slides. And I'll show you what this looks like on a phone, because that's where it really shines. So you have this this is called a scroll story. You just have 1 point per slide, really clearly visualized, that you can go through. There's your methods, key graph, you break it onto 2 slides, key takeaway at the end, and you can link to your contact details. This is by a researcher named Rick Krause, your video version, read the paper, anything you want. This feels almost too easy, right? And you have some left in the tank. That feeling when you get to the end of this and you're like, well, I could read that in a minute. That's too short, right? That's the opposite of that overloaded feeling that we get in a lot of poster sessions. This means you have a lot left in the tank to go see other posters, right? So something like this, I think, would work really well for virtual poster sessions, and because you could probably go through 50 of these and not get that tired, right? Whereas the other design with the panning and zooming, you're just gonna be like, oh, miserable within like 1 or 2. And those port to social media really well. So that's something to consider if you're given an opportunity to do whatever you want in a virtual poster session. I also have Twitter GIF posters. These are Twitter posters. So these apply the same kind of principles to Twitter, which is the idea that like people usually just like share like an abstract paragraph or something on their tweet. And I realized that you could do like animated GIFs on Twitter, and you could do like little animated posters for Twitter. And so we've had a ton of people create these animated research posters that have, again, gone viral in their own way. This is just in PowerPoint. You just create a few slides, and then you save it as a GIF, and you post it to Twitter, and then you get 10 times the eyeballs, maybe 1,000 times the eyeballs as you ever got at a conference. You get collaborators. I think it can be really rewarding for researchers to like see people. This is stupid, but like seeing somebody like your research, right? Like you just get so little feedback in science. It's seeing just like 1 or 2 people like that like it or respond like, oh, that's cool. I was working on something like that or whatever, that it's so meaningful. We just don't get that feedback a lot in traditional science. So again, check out Twitter poster for those. So I want to give you, before we go into the Q&A here, I'm gonna answer like the 2 most common questions I get with a couple of slides. One of them is like, I can't take something off the poster. I can't reduce it, right? Because then I'll lose important detail, right? Like there's this, my friend is an illustrator who's done professional posters for scientists. And she told me the story where the scientist came to her with this poster with like 62 graphs on it. And she was like, which one's the most important graph? And he said, all of them, which is 100% true from a scientific perspective, right? But from a design perspective, like you can't process that many, right? There has to be 1 or 2 that's a little bit more important, and the rest can go in the paper. Even in a paper, that would be a lot, right? And so one example of this is like these terms of service, right? We all know these are a joke, right? Like you click right through them. I've flipped through 1,000 of these, right? No idea what it says, right? But imagine going to the lawyer and telling them, like, I don't read any of this. You have to take it out. The lawyer would be like, no, like that protects us, right? They couldn't remove a single sentence, right? And in this case, like you're the lawyer when you design the poster, right? Like you just can't remove a single sentence, right? When really nobody's getting anything. So there's a service called Terms of Service Didn't Read. It summarizes these things into 5 bullet points. Here's the iCloud one, right? They can delete any of your data, files, music, messages at any time without notice, which I didn't know Apple could just delete all your data, right? They can use your location. They can collect different kinds of personal data, and they order. The service orders these bullet points by like worst first, like the one you need to pay attention to first. In reading this, I don't know about you guys, but like I get more out of this than I ever got out of clicking through that other thing 100 times. But this will never be implemented by Apple, right? It'll always be third party because they're so scared to take it out, even though no one reads it because it's a legal thing, right? So this is sort of an example of it. Like 5 things is more than 0 things, and that matters with posters, because if you're trying to put 1,000 things on it, a lot of times what you end up communicating is 0. Next question I get is where's the evidence, right? Which totally fair question from scientists. Usually we think about things on a continuum of like opinion to like well replicated. And I think that there's another category too, which is anti-evidence, right? It's worse than opinion. It's like we have evidence on something and you're actively going against it. I'd argue that's almost worse than just being ignorant about something, right? Most people think that the traditional scientific poster is like way over here in like replicated land, right? Like they've used it for years. Clearly it's perfect, right? Or whatever, right? And then like the things I'm suggesting are just over here in opinion land, right? It's not quite the case. The traditional scientific poster is more here. It's more in anti-evidence. You can go down the list of like recommended things for instructional design. like the things that contribute positively to a good learning experience from an instructional design. And you go down that checklist, and the traditional design basically ignores every single one of them. Like it just breaks those rules. Like it just, and even as a designer, I can't believe I used to build them this way, right? And like it took 1 year of me being like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Like, what are we all doing? And like I know better. So it's really like you are going, even the research on posters that have been like big reviews have found that like people pay attention to call out boxes, big takeaways, big graphs. Better Poster version 1 was literally a call out box with a big takeaway and a big graph, right? They find that like the traditional poster just needs to be complete. It's just time for it to be redesigned. And part of the reason that it's dysfunctional is, one, because scientists don't get a lot of the design training, just like you're getting right now, some of it, right? But they don't get any of it. And also it's like you have this problem both with like them not getting training and then also conforming, but also like there's that fear of like looking stupid or trying something new, even though we have really good research. The posters I'm suggesting are, they're not just opinion. Like if you watch the Better Poster version 2 video, I can cite every single thing I'm saying. I have references behind, and you can go look at them in the Better Poster Part 2 cartoon. So it's more here. It's like I have a lot of theory grounding and a lot of empirical work that grounds the design decisions I make, and we're just starting to sort of test these designs in the wild. And the other point to take away here is that like nobody's here. Like, yeah, on this continuum, Better Poster maybe a little bit more research grounded than the traditional approach, which is kind of anti-evidence. But nobody's figured it out. There is no perfect poster yet, right? Like Jimmy said before this call, like, this is the best I got for you right now, but I'll hopefully have better advice in a year or whatever, and we'll learn more, and there'll be more research coming out. And someday we'll get to a really, really effective poster session. And the way we're going to get there is by you feeling like the courage to like really experiment and really try new things, and then see what we learn from that. We're not going to get to a really well replicated good design by sticking with the old design that we know is broken. So with that, I hope that some of that was fun and useful, and I'll leave it up to the Q&A. And by the way, all of these templates that I've shown you are available in the Open Science Framework. They're all free. They're all in the public domain, which means you can steal them and use them and modify them without crediting me. I just want to get them out there because I have a health issue, and I just want one of you geniuses to solve it. And I don't really care about the credit. And again, got the videos on YouTube. Thanks a lot.
How do you top going off on a unicorn dabbing? I'm not sure you can wrap up a presentation.
Animated unicorn dabbing. In the Better Poster Part 2 video, he animates. Yeah, he does.
Perfect. All right. So anybody out there watching right now, is a bunch of you on YouTube, or anybody from the ARC in the ARC chat, if you want to ask a question, type it there. I can ask it for you anonymously, not anonymously. Or if you want to click that link I've shared, you can jump into the stream to ask it. I have lots, and for full disclosure, Mike and I have talked a bunch of times about stuff like this, and I still find multiple things that are fascinating. So I'll bring Jamie and David on here as well. Gentlemen, I brought you in because you had your cameras on, and I just said, I need more people than me on the screen. You've seen people hear this presentation, right? You're saying, hey, listen, I'm giving you this. You know that out of 100, X number are going to say that was nice, but I'm not going to do it anyway. And they're going to white knuckle and just continue on doing the old poster design. And I'm sure you've seen people say that have that aha moment and say, oh, I will go and take this effort, go out on a socially new way of doing something and step out, which takes courage, right? What is something that you've seen people have to hear to be from more of the latter and less of the former, more of what gets them to the end of a diving board and makes them jump?
That's a great question. I think the question I get a lot from students is like, I'm sold, but my advisor will never let me, right? Or whatever, right? And like, yeah, and like how do we get this in or whatever? Or like, I've got somebody in my department that won't let me or whatever, right? Like scientists, even mature scientists, are like really afraid of their colleagues. Like that fear never goes away. The thing that gets them over it, I think this is dumb, but honestly, this layout, this is like the crowd pleaser layout. So I think it has enough figures on it to where it'll get you past most people who are more comfortable with the traditional design because it's denser. And I did this layout kind of intentionally adding more complexity back than I think people can realistically process, but knowing that like that feeling of density would be helpful in getting past some of those people and like they would like it. And some people do like to dive into the data. So I've seen this layout, like people who like actively hated me for this one, right? Just like hate my guts, right? would see this layout and be like, I'm good now. Okay, cool. I could try that one, right? Or see this one with the big figure.
Right.
Really, once I started emphasizing figures more, that not only did it get this middle layout like almost universally liked or whatever, it's turned around people who hated the first one, right? So I think definitely start with this one if you're not sure. I think also it can help to know that judges are overloaded too. Like people get afraid of like, what are the poster judges going to think and what are the conference going to think? Is my conference going to allow this? I talk to conferences. It used to be every week. Now it's every 2 weeks or whatever with COVID. But they all the conference administrators want to see like creativity and novelty in poster sessions. And as attendees want that too. When you walk into a poster session, you want to see something new, you want to see something that's going to like engage you. Right. And like poster session judges are like the most overloaded attendees in the whole room because they feel the sense of guilt that they've got to go through and like see all the posters to judge them, right? So they appreciate you reducing their load even more. And the last point I'll say here is that like the first better poster ever, when nobody knew what it was, when I hadn't tried a better poster myself yet, won best poster in the whole show. Wow. And there's something to that. And we've had lots of poster awards. So I think generally creativity is more appreciated than it is like derided.
All right, so my next question, and then I'll open up to some other people as well. David and Jamie, if you haven't, just let me know. I heard, and I forget who said this. I'm sure I could Google it and credit them, but the piece of communication that successfully transmits one idea is infinitely better than the one that fails to communicate 10 ideas. And what I get out of that is, myself included, we want to just include everything. So we do that copy paste to everything on a poster. You're like, I got it. There's 10 nuggets in there, but that by including 10, you're actually limiting it to 0. And I think the example of that is on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen right now. I shared this and asked a question on Twitter. Is this a good poster design? It's the average global temperature from 1850 to 2017. And people are saying, but I don't know anything after I watched that. And I would counter that it increased, and gosh, look how much, because we use color and we use contrast, we use size. And then I would say bottom right-hand corner is if this enticed you, there's a QR code, you can and should learn more. So I had some blowback just by sharing that.
I'm sure
you mentioned you had blowback just by sharing that top left-hand version, the original better poster design. Are you seeing people become at least more open to it?
Sure. I mean, like, to be clear, when I say blowback, it's like the first version was like 70% of people loved it. 25% people were on the fence or had constructive like criticisms or whatever. 10% hated it, and then like 9% hated it, 1% hated me personally. But like overwhelmingly, it was supportive, right? Like that was one of the surprises. Even version 1, when I didn't even have the graph yet, was overwhelmingly supportive. Lots of poster awards, lots of people getting more visitors. These new designs are not controversial at all. Like when I post them, the controversy ends, and then people are usually good with that. The paradox, though, and what you're talking about, Jimmy, is that like usually when you go with the super minimalist posters like this one, this is Ed Hawkins' Warming Stripes. One of the things the traditional poster design does really well is it communicates a sense of effort, right? It is communicating an emotion, and that emotion is density and effort and rigor, right? And knowing that you could find potentially any information you wanted on it, right? Doesn't matter if you were going to ignore the whole thing and just ask the presenter anyway, it's there if you wanted it, right? Kind of like this does. Whereas these new designs, there's a relationship with processing fluency, which is how easy something is to process. And processing fluency and learning is pretty linear. Like the easier you make something to process, the better it is for learning, right? But processing fluency and liking is curvilinear. So that people they like things that are like medium to process, right? Too easy, too hard, then they don't like it, right? And I think scientists have a little bit, they're like moved up on that, right? What happens is if you do the super minimalist one like these, they'll be the best performing poster in the room. The posters I've done with almost nothing on them, almost everyone walking by read more points on them than I've had on any other poster, right? Like they're completely functional. I'm like, oh my God, this is a success. But that first reaction is like too simple, right? And like they get this emotional reaction. Whereas like this one, like the funniest thing about that global warming poster, like if you look, there's a picture of Ed Hawkins who designed this amazing data visualization, and he's sitting in front of like his hallway in his like his department or whatever. And you can see on the wall there's posters, and there's like the traditional posters, and there's his, and it's less than this. I think it's just the stripes on glass or something. Like if you have a beautiful data visualization, show it off. You're standing there to answer any questions. This may be too severe. You could have a sidebar with more, right? If you're not going to be standing there, right? Like in a museum where you have a little sidebar to skim, you can totally do that. You can have a methods flow chart. I try to push the envelope to be like, the most important part is showing off this perfect data visualization you had and making sure everybody sees that, and then going from there instead of just like crushing that in like walls of nuance that like is going to get a lot of stuff ignored.
Right.
I don't know. That was kind of.
Jamie, David, any questions from you gentlemen? You guys have presented posters before.
Jamie, you want to go first?
Yeah.
I can see it.
I've seen a couple of people use flow code, where you hold up your phone to a QR code and it'll play a video of like rehab exercises or part of the, a short film about the methodology or something like that. Have you had much experience with that? And
I've tried it. The other thing I've tried to relate it is like you could do AR, right? You could have, I've seen some AR apps where they have AR QR, where you point your phone at the QR code and you have like a, a floating like lung or whatever you worked on. You can kind of like look around it with your phone. I haven't used one of those myself. I guess people ask me a lot of times, like, what do you link the QR to? And I usually say you can do a link tree with like, the paper and your contact details or whatever, but you could try that. Video would be fun. If I scan somebody's QR code and I saw like a 3D figure or a video, I'd be like, sweet, that was rewarding. And then I'd probably scan more QR codes because I'd associate them with reward. I think really like it is, because like it's not just your poster, right? Like if you make your poster rewarding or punishing, it affects their attitude and how they feel about the rest of the posters in the room, right? Like I'm convinced, and I cannot prove this at all, but I swear to God, like if you do that with a video, like one hyper rewarding poster would get you more poster views for the whole session, and one really punishing, horrible, overwhelming poster, people are just gonna be like, I'm going to lunch, and skip the rest of the session. You could poison the whole well. I bet you could. But I can't prove that yet. I can say that like when we went to this is off the reward thing, so I riffed too far, Jamie. But I think I have been to an all better poster session, and the first thing I realized people were saying when every poster in the room was better poster was like, I feel like I can see a lot more of these. And so when you do things like that to make every poster rewarding, you get more circulation. You should try it though. Let me know how it goes, Jamie. Is it Jamie or?
That was Jamie. This is David.
Cool.
So I don't know if this is a terrible or disruptive question to ask, but
go for it.
But since we're here, I've always hated posters. I just think that it's the most paternalistic crap in the world. You've got a talented scientist, and they're standing nervously by this piece of paper saying, "Validate me." As you've mentioned, that they're typically poorly designed pieces of work to communicate knowledge. Mike, you seem to be an expert at this. How would you, how do we just get rid of posters? What should it look like at conferences?
Oh, dude, I love this question. This is disruptive. I've never had it before. Like, let's just skip it. Let's just kill him. First of all, you're not alone at all. Like that. I mean, I didn't think anybody'd see the first Better Poster video. I thought it'd just be like, I thought it was me bugging people in my field to look at it, and then it exploded across science in like 24 hours. And my first reaction was like, you guys really hated posters. Like, like wow. And then I asked you, like, what would be the complete opposite of that experience? Like everything you hate about them, right? Like, I think that, and that's what I think I get misinterpreted sometimes. Like, I'm not trying to create like a slightly better version of what exists right now, because what exists right now is terrible, right? What I want is a completely different world than we have right now. And like, imagine like David, if you could walk into a poster session, and instead of it being this like misery with people just saying their way on people to look at them and stuff, right? if it could feel like getting like a software update for your whole field, right? Like there's no other place in science where you get random exposure like that. Like if you go to a symposium, you chose that topic. If you choose a paper, you chose that topic. In a poster session, you have no idea. You can get anything. And that's so valuable to get this width, right? If you could walk into that room and get 100 findings into your brain in like an hour walkthrough, right? And some of them stick or whatever, you'd walk through that room over and over again, I bet, right? Without the rest of the drama. And so, yeah, I think like, I want to create that world where you get like the software update and like the networking stuff. I don't know how you feel about this, David, but like people like really harp on like the networking advantages of poster sessions, which I get, but it's also like one of those things where like you don't have a choice right now. Like people pick which poster to engage in, sometimes like based on like, this is literally a finding, the attractiveness of the presenter or how pathetic the presenter looks like, right? Like in like because the poster gives them nothing, so you're getting information sent from the person. It's called social information foraging, and so like we might lose some of that networking if we keep people circulating, maybe, but like there is a different world. I don't know. What would be like, what is the opposite? What is a poster session that you would actually love, David, personally?
Happy hour?
Is it possible? Yeah, we drinks at the beginning or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, you know, drinks at the beginning make everything better.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's such a flawed way to consume information. I mean, conferences in general, I take issue with, just because they tend to be echo chambers. They tend to be, you know, these are the people we're listening to. This is the direction we're going, and no one else gets a seat at the table. So I've been thinking for a while, we need to completely disrupt these sorts of things. I was recently at a conference where, you know, the interaction was very different to any other conference. It's like you have performance art, and then you have, you know, data visualization, and then you know, so it was always, your brain was always in a state of, I don't know what's coming next, and so you take everything in because it's novel.
Right.
But our academic conferences are so far from that at the moment.
Would it
That's a
be
great example?
You know, all right, what were those two terms against? Knowledge sent and what? Acquisition cost, or what were the two? What were the two?
Oh, interaction cost and information sent.
I mean, mock it all you want, but like TikTok and Reels, that's it. Like it's like, this is super easy, and if I don't like it, the user experience is like, I don't like it, out. But myself included, I mocked it, and then next thing you know, you're like, I've been here for an hour, like absorbing what? Like, and like this is where you say it could be for your powers can be used for evil or for good.
Yeah.
But could we embrace that way? Because our brains, whether I want to watch cat videos and just veg out and watch soccer highlights, or learn more about a scientific topic, our brains work the same way to absorb information.
Exactly. It's the same across the board. Also, Gabby has a question. Hey, Gabby.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks for all that. This is awesome. But I was just wondering, while we are still kind of stuck in this paradigm, do you have any advice for where to kind of prioritize your efforts in terms of either like really paring down what you want to present on the poster versus like spending a lot of time like summarizing it the best possible way, like trying to bring everything in, but like really well, or just like cut.
So I have the brave advice, like, which is like if you were just willing to try anything, like what would work probably the best. I have this thing where like, if you were to show up with like, we had first year poster presenters show up with like literally a whiteboard, you know, and like write a finding on it. And when somebody's like, and then like their paper, and then somebody's like, well, yeah, but like, what did the data look like? And then they draw the graph on there, you know, and then we just add one thing at a time until at some point people won't start like what you'll find when you do this kind of stuff, when you start with one, you'll reach a point where like people stop asking deep questions and they start going more shallow because they're getting less. You'll find that like part of learning how to do this well is learning where that threshold is that's too much, right? And like it's so low that starting simple, like if you started out with that poster I showed that's like just one thing on it, every single person in the room would read it. You would get immediate feedback about like what's missing. They'd be like, well, where's a graph? And that's 100% what they would say, BT dubs. I can say that from personal experience. And then like, you know, to add a graph next time. And then when you show up with a graph and a finding, they'll ask something else, and that's what you add the next time. That is absolutely the most efficient way for you to get incredible at these design things, but it's terrifying, and you will get people harassing you for it, you know, but you'll also maybe win an award at some point. And like, if you think of it, your skills in terms of like not your posters this year, but your posters 5 posters from now, right? And like those are going to be insane. And you can do the final thing I'll say is you can do anything, like practice breaking the rules. And like I've seen people, I saw one researcher, she created a poster. She was a poster on motor disability, which you're PT, you know this stuff or whatever, right? You do this all the time, which I have, by the way. I'll ask you about my carpal tunnel after this. But like, she made the entire poster out of cardboard by hand to show that like somebody with motor disability couldn't do that, couldn't hold the scissors or whatever, right? So it wasn't just a gimmick. It was really like, it made you think about like her study and what and the purpose of what she was doing. And like, there are no rules. Like you can just try, just let your like inner child out. Yeah, I guess that's what I would do, especially now during COVID when like nobody's looking at anything. That's the best time to just take crazy risks or whatever and have fun. You'll learn so much more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that an answer, I guess?
Mentioning that you mentioned the whiteboard, I like that idea, but even take it another step further, like technology, we should be using it so much more, and it is more accessible and like getting cheaper. So like, why not everyone just have like a tablet? Like that's what's displayed for each person, and you can like the first page, maybe it's like an interactive slideshow basically for each poster, and like the first one is maybe your poster, what the poster would look like, but then you can like scroll through if people are asking like, where's that graph, and then you show them.
I mean,
I think that's where it'll go.
You pointed it out in your presentation, Mike, and I've said it before too. You have a really smart person who got out of bed, went through TSA, got on an airplane, flew all the way to the conference, and is standing right there, right? Like that human being.
There's so much wasted brain power in science. It's unbelievable. Right. And like, I think that I saw Gabby, for what it's worth, I did talk to a poster printer one time, like somebody who like prints the posters or whatever. And I was like, in 100 years, what do they look like? Right. And he said, like you'll have a roll, it'll be a screen and you'll take that. And like, I think the thing with screens right now is that their resolution's too low. And so like you read them slower until we get to, I want to say it's like, I forgot. It's like we're at like 8K now. I think you have to be at like 32K or something where it matches what we're capable of perceiving. And once we get there, that probably the reading will speed up. But then we can do all kinds of stuff. And 100% on board with what you said, Gabby, across the board. But like we're not using technology enough. Like as a web developer, right? And like science to me is like not even on the internet yet. Like it hasn't even caught up with like mid 2000s tech culture, like
printing posters isn't cheap either. Like you can buy a tablet for the price of
you really can. Yeah, like $100 you get cheap Android tablet.
And then look at it too. I mean, you go to restaurants now and the menus are all on screens, right? Because you want to be able to change it. You want it to be interactive. You want it to flip
people
through.
Adapted to that, the QR codes.
All right. Even if you're watching a replay of this on any of the platforms that we're sharing it on, you can drop a comment below and we can make sure to share with Mike, or what we'll also do is share your contact information, Mike, if that's okay with you. Maybe we'll share your link tree or something like that.
I'm on Twitter at Mike Morrison, and that's a good place to get me. And then, share whatever contact detail you want. And check out my new venture, Researchable.
And I would like to know, anybody who's presented a poster, what do you do with it afterwards? Do you give it away as a prize? Do you take it home and in your garage? Sophia, watching in the comments below, has forgotten her poster at a layover once. I'm guessing that means on the way to the conference.
Did you print your whiteboard in 8x11? Yeah, you see those. That's rough. Sorry, Sophia.
Mike, I appreciate your time. I always learn something, even though I've heard you give these presentations a bunch of time. This is what we know now, and later on we'll know a little bit more. And let's get that knowledge from in your head and all your work out of it, so we can do what the poster session and conferences and really just the scientific community is designed for, which is like learning stuff and then teaching other stuff to people so they can learn stuff and do stuff with it so we can change the world.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Thanks for coming, guys. Hope it was useful.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.